Hey, let's all promise that in 10 years from today, we'll meet again, and we'll see what kind of people we've blossomed into.
Yeah!
The year is 1991.
Out of the way!
It's been 10 years since we last saw our favorite campers and counselors.
Move this, move that, this and that, these and those, that and that.
Lives change. People change. But some things never will.
What's up, bitches? Let's rage! Susie, you made it! What, am I gonna miss my camp reunion?
You're still sporting the perm, huh?
That's what it is. It just comes out this way.
That's great.
Jean, I would like you to meet my daughter, Jenny. Jenny, this is Jean.
Hey.
Hey, cool bandana.
You having fun?
Yeah!
Okay, you win. I'm still in the camp.
Bye-bye now.
What? Hey, shit or get off the pot. You're ruining the flow of the game.
You're ruining the flow of my dick, old man.
Oh!
This feels right. You and me trying to save the camp.
Yeah, and that's all we're doing.
We could do more, like with our tongues and butts.
Andy.
Fuck you, Logan.
Fuck yourself, Suze. It's cheaper.
Are you saying what I think you're saying?
Well, if you're thinking that what I'm saying is what I'm saying, then yes, I'm thinking that what you're saying is what you're saying.
David Wain, everybody. Keep it up. Keep clapping. David, thanks so much for being here. It's such a pleasure to have you. As I told you backstage, I'm a big fan of your work going back to your early days on the State.
Thank you, and I'm a big fan of AOL going back to my early days on the State, which is
chat.
Well, I had the first email address I had was thestate@aol.com, and I just appreciate you guys here setting me up with that back in 1994.
When you guys were just like a NYU sketch group, right? And you were trying to sell yourselves?
Well, I'm a little older than you might think, but I had my first email address in 1992, when we were already starting at MTV at that time.
So that makes sense. That's right when email was really
just kicking it.
Just
Me and Jake Fogelness used to talk on NYO, which was New York Online. That was before anyone was on the internet, and it was just a message board chat service. Wow. I'm so cool.
You go way back with that internet. So our third sort of rendition of Wet Hot American Summer, the second series, 10 years later, what made you guys want to come back for another season after you came back a couple years ago?
Well, when we did the prequel series on Netflix, I can tell you I had no idea if we were going to pull off anything worthwhile. We waited. Well, we waited a lot of years. I mean, the movie came out 17 years ago, and it was a huge flop, and then it became this cult movie or something that people really started to care about and talk about and watch over and over again, and it became very gratifying, and it's obviously a super special movie for a lot of fans and myself, and I was worried about touching that and tainting it by doing more or trying to, there are so many pitfalls of doing a sequel or a prequel where you can look like you're treading the same water or trying to reignite something that should have gone out long ago, or there's a million ways to do it wrong. And so I was very worried about it. But then when we did the first day of camp one, I thought it was, for me, I was like, we pulled it off. I was so happy with how it came out for my money and the response we got. And so we certainly were like, yeah, let's try it again.
Can we go back to when you said when the movie came out, it was kind of a flop? Because I remember when it came out, and I loved it immediately. I thought it was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen. And then I went online and I looked up some reviews, and Roger Ebert had this horribly, like, just one of his meanest reviews was dedicated to Wet Hot American Summer.
But how amazing that the foremost film critic at the time in the whole world, Roger Ebert, took the time to actually write out rhyming lyrics to a whole song, and that's how he wrote his review, talking about how much he hates Wet Hot American Summer.
He wrote a campfire song.
I couldn't have been more flattered, to be honest. But because all the reviews were terrible, or many of them, some of them were good, but...
I think someone from Entertainment Weekly, like Owen Gleiberman, got it, right?
He got it, and he was one of our early champions, and that was so awesome. A lot of the reviews that I remember were like, they were looking for ways to say how much they hate it, and they couldn't come up with it. Someone said, it's better, I would rather slam like big spikes into my forehead than watch this movie. You know, I was like,
it's so strange.
Is it that bad?
It felt like nobody understood that it was a parody of those movies. You know,
right.
That you were trying to just be those movies, but not doing it well or something.
Well, the Village Voice wrote a great little blurb about it at the time, saying something like, it exists in this own weird, sweaty meta-universe of its own. Maybe it's before its time, question mark? I was like,
and it was.
That sounds good. You know?
When did you start to notice that it was sort of picking up steam or like cult status?
Really, like after the DVD came out 6 months later or something, and then maybe a year after that, it just little by little, just people on the street would stop me, or you just hear people talking about it, or it just became this thing that was bigger than, you know, the release in the theaters was nothing. Nobody saw it. And then they started having midnight screenings and people dressing up and people having theme parties, and just grew every year, every single year, more and more summer screenings, outdoor screenings. And so clearly it was a thing where, because the movie was never popular in the first place, people had a certain sense of ownership and discovery about it. And they, you know, so many people have said the greatest compliment is, I judge whether I can be friends with someone based on what their reaction is to this movie. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome.
It's definitely that sense of ownership is real. I remember when I saw it, we rented it. We had no idea what it was. I just knew that it was from the creators of the state, and I was excited about it. And nobody had said anything to me about it. When I watched it, it was a room of guys going like, "Oh my God, this is for us. They made a movie for us."
Well, and that's basically what we set out to do. We were like, let's do a camp movie, but like make it our thing, like do it with our sense of humor. And there was no other way to describe it. So when we were trying to raise money for it over 3 long years to raise 2 cents to make the movie, people were like, so what's the point? It's just a camp movie. We were like, yeah, but it's like, you know, our funny way of doing it. And they're like, what are you talking about? You know?
Had you made Stella videos already at that point? Could you show them the Stella videos and stuff like that?
Yeah, but that probably wasn't a selling point to anybody who had a checkbook.
You flopping around with a dildo wasn't a selling point?
I don't think that was like our big calling card. But we actually started making the Stella videos during the time when we were trying to raise money. We wrote the first draft in '97, yeah.
And you and
I was about to go through like all the year dates, and people were gonna like go to sleep and then kill themselves.
And you and Showalter wrote the original movie, right?
Correct.
And then when First Day of Camp came along, who were the main writers for that? Was it just you and him for the most part?
The two of us conceived the arc of it, and we laid out all the storylines and figured out the broad strokes together. And then we brought in a writer's room for a few weeks to fill it out and write it. And they were incredible people that, including Charles and Sarah Violet, who went on to create Search Party, and a bunch of other amazing writers.
Is it hard to find other writers that can sort of match your tone? Because a lot of writers, with a lot of writers' rooms, I think it's about finding people who throw out enough jokes and having the jokes to do. But your jokes, the jokes of Wet Hot American Summer are particularly meta, and the plot points are meta a lot of the time. It's a lot of sort of making fun of itself while also trying to do it.
Well, it's interesting. When we did the Stella series on Comedy Central in 2005, we thought about bringing in writers, and it was impossible because there was no way to describe what we were trying to do. Now I think we have enough of a group of young writers that have come up and understand or have been fans of what we do, and it was easier. And you also had, when we were doing the Wet Hot Prequel series 2 years ago, we had a movie to show. And so you could say, here's the sensibility, you know? And of course, every word and every joke still has to filter through me and Mike Showalter. And there were many pitches that were like, that's funny, but it's not really, doesn't fit in what, our version of it would be to do it like that, or less funny, or whatever. And, but the answer is yes. I think we found a growing group of people that do know how to write that sensibility. And some of the great scenes and jokes and material in both series was not written by me or Mike.
I can imagine a sort of regular writer coming into the writer's room of Stella or even early Wet Hot and delivering a joke, and then you guys going in front of the camera and delivering it the way that you do, which is like kind of mocking the joke while doing the joke, and that writer just being like, hey man, don't kill my joke, like not getting what you're doing with their joke.
Yeah, I have such specific memories of when I was doing Stella series on Comedy Central. I was about 35 years old, but the crew that we were working with were people in their 40s and 50s, veteran crew guys in New York. And I was directing the pilot and some of the episodes, and I was like, okay, so the camera's gonna come in here. All right, here we go, action. Just like acting like it's, and then these guys are like, what are we shooting? Oh my God, hope I get paid at the end of the day.
So who were you, what storyline were you most excited to sort of follow up on in 10 years later? Because with the prequel, you're sort of starting those stories over again. With 10 years later, you're really following up on the storylines from the movie.
Well, I think the kernel that Mike and I were so excited about was the genre being young people in their 20s in the city, like trying to figure out what it is, you know? And mostly not married yet, but just like learning who they are, and like, but they're out of school, and just like that genre, which in the 90s was so, you know, the St. Elmo's Fire and
reality bites kind
reality
of going
bites,
on in there.
yeah. And so that overall idea was really exciting to us. And in fact, we developed boatloads of material about all the characters living in New York or wherever and living their lives that we ended up not putting in the show just because we ultimately realized we've got to bring it to summer camp soon. But we were going to have 3 episodes in New York.
I love the stuff with Zach Orth, like in the Kim's videos,
right.
Or just one. Also, was just nice to see Kim's video again. But
well, I have to tell you, we put a lot of time and effort in because Kim's Video is a store that's long closed, the alternative video store on St. Mark's.
An institution.
But we created a shot by shooting the St. Mark's as it is now, and then finding the old Kim's logos and artwork, and then lovingly sort of recreating in post-production what that street would have looked like with Kim's Video on it at the time for a 1-second establishing shot.
I feel like you're a long-time New Yorker. I'm sure it was wonderful for you to recreate Kim's. Did you go to Kim's a lot?
Of course. I mean, I lived in the East Village, and I went to NYU, and I lived here for 26 years. And so a lot of what we shot this thing entirely in Malibu, California, as we did the last Netflix show as well. And so a lot of the fun to me and the puzzles was like, how do we invoke the 90s New York that we knew so well? And in fact, there was one subplot we never put in where one of the characters was working at MTV, and there was a sketch group there starting a TV show, and it was very meta and navel gazing. And
where did that go? Did you end up like sort of figuring out where that plot went? That sounds pretty funny.
There was actually a lot of stuff with that one that would have been pretty funny. But you know, that's the thing. We write for everything that's on screen. There's like 20 different threads that we just throw out. You know, there's thousands of index cards.
I feel like doing this sort of mid-20s post-college malaise plot line of the 90s, you're also getting to do the same thing that you kind of got to do with the movie, which is like having actors who are about 10 or 15 years older than the age that they're supposed to be playing.
More than that, but yeah.
I was trying to be deferential towards these actors.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, we're median around 45 at this point, I would say. But yeah, what we realized also, or just decided with the prequel, was the actual age of the actors just not even in our list of things we're thinking about. We're just like, the actors are the actors, and the ages are the ages, and neither the twain shall meet.
Speaking of the actors being the actors, Ben is played by McKinley's
Ben, which
husband,
is
Ben.
Bradley Cooper's character, is played by Adam Scott.
Now, what happened with Bradley Cooper just not available?
Bradley Cooper is shooting A Star Is Born, and he
Directing and starring.
Directing and starring, and yeah, he just could not make it work, which was unfortunate, but we, as with any production reality, and we have a lot of them on this kind of a show, trying to juggle so many cast members, we just try to make lemonade with everything. So bringing in Adam Scott, who is so great in this series, to take over that role in a funny way. And you'll see how we do it.
What did Cooper give you on the prequel series? Like a day or two?
Something like that.
Who was the?
Not a lot.
Were there any days where you had the entire cast together?
Not even close.
Really?
In fact, part of the secret of how we do it is we will shoot the same scene sometimes over 7 or 8 different shoot days just to get all the cast members in it. And this particular series it's really about a group, and so it's about the summer camp reunion 10 years later. So there's more scenes than last year with the whole group moving around doing stuff, and we just had to fake it.
Really?
But it works. It's seamless, I think, because
it's seamless, and then when it's not seamless, it's intentionally not seamless. It's calling attention to itself.
Right. Yeah. And we made a point of I don't know what I was going to say. Yeah.
Was it? Who is organizing that with you? Is that like your production team is really?
Yeah, I mean,
that seems logistically like a nightmare.
I have a great first assistant director who does the scheduling, and we all work on it together. But it's also being creative. You can't just do it that way. You have to be creative with the script every day and be like, okay, this actor can only be there for 2 days, but we really want them in every episode. How do we figure that out? And maybe we switch those scenes around or give that to that character. And again, so often the limitations of budget or time end up inspiring some weirder other idea. And we always have that tool to use, which is that the whole thing is so silly, and so we can be like, well, turn that into a joke, But one of the things that I do try to do for Wet Hot is anything that's not supposed to be a joke, we try to be as real and as observational and as accurate to the time period and the world of summer camp as we can, because it is a real memory for me and Michael that's important, and there's a real nostalgia and heart factor to it, and then all the silliness is then layered into it.
I also feel like so much of the silliness comes from real cliches of moments between some of these characters. Like you said, it's observational, but even when you find like a kernel of truth, you have them play it in a way that is sort of, they're not actually telling jokes, they're just doing lines that you would have seen in a movie like this, but in a slightly heightened way.
Or not even. Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes some of our favorite scenes, and I believe I speak for Mike as well, is just
jokes that only you get.
Well, the joke is that we're just doing that kind of a scene that you would have seen in that kind of the movie without any twist on it or any comment, and that's what's funny about it. Like, it's just so, banal dialogue or just cliche moments, and yeah.
Now, I was talking to you about this in the green room, but you have another movie in post-production right now, right? A movie that's about the story of National Lampoon's, the founding of National Lampoon.
It's called A Futile and Stupid Gesture.
Right, incredible cast that you have in that movie.
Yeah, with Will Forte and Donald Gleason and Matt Walsh and Emmy Rossum, and a huge cast. Tom Lennon gives an incredible performance as Michael O'Donoghue. And it's basically about the early days of the forming of the National Lampoon and the life of Doug Kenny, who then went on to make Animal House and Caddyshack. And it was my first biopic. It's my first period movie. Well, that's not true, but it's also not entirely a comedy at all. It's a dramatic story about comedy.
What was it like? What was it like directing that? And did you try to bring the kind of twists or the David Wain sensibility that you have with these other films, or did you try to sort of stay away from that and make something a bit more straightforward and dramatic?
Well, you'll see, it's not straightforward. It's actually, what we tried to do was make as unusual a take on what we're doing with this movie as National Lampoon did for what they were disrupting back then. And so it's told in a totally unconventional way. However, it's not in the same sensibility as Wet Hot and a lot of other things I've done because of what you're saying. And it's really, though, honoring what came before and what inspired me. When I was growing up, it was all about Harold Ramis and Animal House and Caddyshack. And, that was such bedrock, important comedies for me. And so this is telling the story of how that sensibility was invented. And Doug Kenny is a name that most people, young people probably don't know, but he really arguably invented the comedic sensibility that is still going today. That comes out in me and anyone, all this huge family tree of comedians.
Yeah, absolutely. How would you define that sensibility?
I don't know if I can, honestly. I've thought about it because it's similar to people saying, how do you define my comic sensibility? And I'm like, that's one of those questions like somebody else has to answer.
It's like what makes you laugh is what you
Basically,
do.
yeah.
Now, after, not after Wet Hot American Summer, but after Role Models, you sort of got a chance to make one or two movies again through the studio. You made Wanderlust through a studio, right? And They Came Together was an independent film for the most part, right?
Yep, very much so. I mean, it was ultimately financed by Lionsgate, but it was an independent film and very low budget.
And now the Lampoon movie is being made through Netflix. Do you even see an opening anymore with studios for comedies?
I mean, I know more from just people, from talking to people that, the sort of straightforward comedy.
Like, is there a world where Role Models could exist under
It doesn't
a studio?
seem so. It seems like the medium budget studio comedy is gone away, or that kind of movie, and they don't make them much and they don't work that well, and it's weird. It's all changed. But I think part of it is there's just so much incredible stuff on television, and there's 10 times more series now than there were 5 years ago. And so that's just where people are watching. And that's kind of why we ended up making Wet Hot American Summer on Netflix, because we realized that's kind of where our audience is.
Did you have the opportunity to make it anywhere else beforehand? Were there options?
We conceived it for Netflix. We basically thought to ourselves, we were going to make it as a movie at a very different form. But then at a certain point, we looked around and we're like, this is really a Netflix show. And we're going to sort of rethink it and pitch it to Netflix, and if they say no, then we won't do it.
What was the thinking about returning to Wet Hot American Summer initially? Was that the fan base had grown so large that you could tell there was a hunger for it, or were you guys hungry to sort of go back there and do it once again?
Definitely both. I mean, we had been asked about it a lot over the years, and I had publicly thought about doing this prequel thing, and we thought it would always be really cool to talk about the first day of camp, and no matter how much older the actors were, we thought that was funny. And so it's an idea that we've been thinking about for a long, long, long time. And there was a lot of interest in it from fans too. And so it was the right time and place.
Now, you put yourself on screen a little bit for Wet Hot American Summer. Not so much. I think you have cameos in a lot of your movies, but not that big of parts. And it reminds me of this state sketch that I loved when I was a kid. It was an entire show, really, about how you weren't in that many things because you were the editor, right? Or were you calling yourself I think you were calling yourself the editor in that.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah. Are you confident in your acting ability? Were you confident then, or was that always a joke, or did that come from a real place?
No, that was totally real. I was not super confident in my acting abilities then. I still don't think I'm a great actor now, but I don't care anymore.
Great Israeli accent.
Thank you. Well, my biggest compliment I got from playing Yaron on Wet Hot American Summer was real Israelis came up to me and they were like, wow, you really got that whole thing down in a way that we haven't seen. And I was like, yes. Just because it's so imprinted on me by the obnoxious Israeli counselors that I was around when I went to summer camp. But yes, when I was doing the state back in the early mid-90s, I wasn't a very confident actor and I wasn't very good. And so as a member of the 11-member competitive ensemble, I didn't have a lot of parts. And it was hard for me. I was like bummed about it, but I turned it into Lemonade, making that sketch about how I'm the editor, and then I edited myself into every shot of the opening credits.
Yeah, the episode opens with him talking about how he's not in that much of the show. It's because he's the editor, and then the opening credits start, and then he just cuts himself into every single shot of the opening credits.
It was actually the first time that we had NonLinear Editing. We had an Avid brought into our office, and in order to teach myself how to use it, I made that piece, not thinking we would put it on the show.
And the other members thought it was funny?
Yeah, they were like, oh, let's do it. And then we created the reason for it, and we did it. But and now I've been working more and more and more as an actor, and only recently are people asking me other than myself. Like really? Usually I'm the one who casts myself in anything. But little by little, I just did a little part in a movie shooting in France. I just got back. Thank you. Thanks. No, don't worry about it. Thank you, guys. That's so sweet.
What's the movie?
It's called Under the Eiffel Tower, and it stars Matt Walsh.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Love Matt Walsh.
He's amazing.
A friend of the show, I think, as they say.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I'm curious going back to the state, because you've been working with these guys now for 3 decades, right?
Yeah.
Almost all of the people that are in the state you're working with in some capacity at some point in the last
That's right.
3 decades.
We all keep, it's 11-member ensemble that we started in college, and now we're all almost 50 and still working together all the time in different configurations.
Has it gotten easier to work together at 50? Because I remember reading some stories.
By the way, I'm only 47. I'll be 48 tomorrow.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Don't worry about it, but thank you. That's so nice.
Aren't they so nice?
I can't believe they all remembered.
Has it gotten easier to work together over the last 3 decades as opposed to when you were kids and you were really hungry and you were starting out?
I mean, certain things get easier. You know, the shorthand it keeps growing, and now we have 3 decades of shorthand, and that's fun. And everyone's more confident. Everyone's better at what they do in some ways. But at the same time, which is what started to happen during the state, everyone's got their more individual sensibilities that grow and grow and grow separately too. So that's, it works in different ways. But it's having a family. It's amazing. I'm very, very lucky to see on a daily basis and work with my friends from college.
Let's get some questions from the audience.
Oh, that's a great idea. Questions from the audience.
Right there.
Hey.
Hey. What's up?
I had a question about, I feel like in the past, maybe like few years, I would see shows and I didn't know you were a part of, and then I started seeing like the production, like you started leaning into production more, like Children's Hospital and stuff.
Yeah.
I guess was there like kind of a choice or just like a preference of leaning into the production more than acting or something?
No, I mean, well, I've never been an actor primarily, but with Children's Hospital, that was just during the writer's strike, Rob Corddry had this idea to do this show about a children's hospital, but make it funny, and I thought that was probably the worst idea I've ever heard. But he asked me, can I just help him out, be part of it? And I said, sure, and it was a web series idea at the time, and did not think it would last, it would even get made. And it went on to become 7 seasons on Adult Swim and win a bunch of Emmy Awards and stuff, so it was great. But I worked on that as a director, writer, producer, and actor, and it was a blast and a really special show. And if you haven't seen it, 7 seasons, check it out, it's great.
Next question.
Hi, I'm a huge fan. The state is like still an inspiration. I go to Tish and I watch it all the time just to remind myself why
You go to Tish to watch it?
No, I go to Tish and I watch it as inspiration because Tish is so soul-sucking.
Very good.
Yeah, but so I just wanted to ask, you do a lot of collaboration work, like the state, Stella, Wet Hot. What is some tips for like a good collaboration with like a writing partner, or just a team, or?
Great question.
What are good tips for collaboration? I would say pick the right people, the best you can. And then, I don't know, I mean, there's so many. Choose your battles, don't argue everything. Try to argue the things that you care most about and listen. And I think also a good thing that I've learned over the years is set out what the partnership is before you start. So, if one person, I've seen so many things happen where they're like, wait a minute, I assumed I was going to be the director or the tiebreaker or the head of this or the star of this. And just like lay those things out before you start something. And but I think, frankly, I think a lot of the reason why I've had such good collaborations with like the state people over the years is the luck of meeting those people at the right time and bonding with them the way we did. And but
who do you get along with the best?
Oh my God.
And who do you get along with the worst?
Next question.
I think we have time for one more question, right?
What about Hillary Clinton? She had her own problems. I'm deflecting. I'm pivoting. Yeah.
Hey, David. So I was wondering, what did you end up learning while filming the first season that you got to apply when you were doing the second season?
Well, just doing the first season of anything, you learn. There was so many X factors. Like, could we make this weird ranch in Malibu look like a summer camp in Pennsylvania that was supposed to look like a summer camp in Maine? And could we recreate the look and feel in the right way of, there were so many things that we just had no clue if would work at all and how to do them. So doing it again we had new things. It's a new time period and new characters and new stories, but some of the basics of how to get it done at all, we understood. So that part was easier. And certainly the confidence of knowing that we can shoot everything we want, regardless of whether the actors could be there. And so the way we get this insane, incredible cast of the funniest people in the world is by telling them all, we're shooting during these like 8 weeks or whatever, and just come at any point that you can for as long as you can, and we'll figure it out.
Really?
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. So, I mean, give me an example of how that works. Like,
Well,
Paul Rudd says I can show up on
Paul
these
Rudd
days.
might say, just for example, I can only be there for the last 3 days of the shoot. And A.D. Miles might say, I'm the head writer of Jimmy Fallon, and I can only be there the first 3 days of the shoot. And there's a few scenes that involve both of them talking to each other, and there's even one where they're holding hands and dancing together. And we just decide we'll just make it work. And we have different angles and body doubles and whatever.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
David, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm such a fan of your work. Wet Hot American Summer 10 Years Later premieres this Friday, August 4th. And when can we look
And again, I'm a big fan of America Online.
Well, it's not called that anymore.
But for me, it is.
Okay, fair enough. And when can we see the National Lampoon movie?
The release date TBD, but sometime soon. Watch out for that. But
is it done?
No, we're just finishing it now. In fact, just earlier today, I was recording some audio stuff for it. And then August 4th, this Friday, please tell everyone, please spread the word. There's a lot of stuff going on. Also, the movie Fun Mom Dinner opens the same day, and there's a little surprise cameo from me in that as well.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I think Bridget Everett is coming in tomorrow to talk about that.
You can ask her about me.
I will.
Mostly.
I think she'll say nice things.
If she remembers who I was.
David Wain, everybody. Thanks, David.
Thank you.